Welcome back, everybody. House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is still Wednesday, January 14th, and we are still talking to Hunter from the Department of Public Service, but on a different topic. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Scott Campbell from St. Dougbury.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southbrook, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Brian Putner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Morris Lilly, Wyndham 2.
Great. And in the room,
Allison Despatchy, Vermont's for a Clean Environment.
Jim Porter with Department of Public Service.
great.
Hunter Thompson, Director of Telecommunications for the Department of Public Service.
And Maria Royal with Legislative Council.
Super. Are you going to be joining us for testimony? I'm looking at an outdated agenda, which is my fault.
I'm happy to, absolutely.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if you were, here to listen, or I couldn't remember if we'd added you to the schedule. That's my bad. We did ask. Great. Well, maybe if you're free later, if you're not doing anything, that would be great. So, okay, and Maria is here from the council. Okay, for the record, Hunter, we're here to talk about Consolidated Communications / Video and their application to discontinue legacy voice service.
Thank you. For the record, Hunter Thompson, Director of Telecommunications for the Department of Public Safety or Service, rather. I might defer to Jim as a caveat on some of the legal questions around this, and I will try to speak up.
Great.
So again, I have a wealth of notes to kind of keep me on track. Most of this is coming off in the form of general statements about the discontinuance of copper as it relates to Fidium and Consolidated. So at an overarching level, the department is in favor of the transition from copper to fiber. This is a technological transition that needs to happen. The department recognizes the need to migrate away from this legacy copper technology to a more modern telecommunications infrastructure. This is going to enable much more telehealth, much more online commerce, but this much more interactivity through the internet. I think we look back at COVID and we can see a large population that was kind of left behind due to the lack of internet infrastructure. And I think that the migration from copper technology to fiber is going to aid in reducing that gap. As far as the discontinuance itself, the department recognized and flagged the potential for issues around this transition in May of 2024 in case 23-4353, which was regarding Condor Searchlight's increased investment in Consolidated Video.
Sorry. Would you
Say that again?
say that again? Yeah. So in May 20, did you say it faster? No, don't say it faster. In May 2024, what?
The department recognized and flagged the potential for issues around this transition from copper to fiber in May of 2024 in case 23-4353, which was regarding Condor and Searchlight's increased investment in Consolidated and Fidium.
Yeah.
So this is the case where Consolidated went private, right?
Yes, correct.
And the PUC had a case open to look at the CPG on this.
Yep.
And these were the comments from the department, or there were comments. Can you share those comments with us?
Yep.
Are you going to read them now?
Nope, I don't have them all written down.
Madam Chair, if we could get those comments, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. If you can send them along and then we'll post them. And what was the case number?
23-4353-EET for petition. Yeah, I will send a link to that one. I'll get that.
Great.
So around that, the department had looked for some additional guardrails in the PUC. You see that in the comments. Some of these provisions were included, some of them weren't. We'll also see that in the comments in the final order. At the onset of this process, not the process of the fiber discontinuance, but the process of the general conversion of copper to fiber, myself, the director of telecommunications, reached out to the previous Fidium government affairs liaison, Scott Brooks, and we had started to discuss the topic of how we can create an MOU between Fidium and Consolidated and the department to get some of this increased communication through us.
Just clarifying, Hunter, you're talking about this specific discontinuing that went to the FCC, what we're talking about here in this committee.
These conversations started before this discontinuance was filed with the FCC. These conversations started months ago on how this process will look and how the department will be a part of it and be.
And you were talking about an MOU before this FCC petition.
Yeah, yes, yeah, we had been in discussions with Scott and with Fidium about that. And I believe that when Fidium testified a couple days ago, last week, they said they remained open to a MOU, and we have actually started those discussions again.
Since their petition that they didn't tell you about, that's going to work.
Yep.
Right.
So the department recognizes that given its inherent role, it is more likely to hear of the negative experiences of consumers rather than the positive experiences. I think that's a fair assessment. We don't often have people getting hold of us to tell us how wonderful things should go. The department recognizes that Fidium is doing outreach beyond the single notification included in the FCC petition. Right? Acknowledge this. I actually asked my mother this week how this went because she was one of the people who got notified in the petition in St. Albans. And she said that after she got the initial letter that was included in the FCC petition, once she provided her email and made the official order to switch from copper to fiber, the information came fast and furious and notifications and the communications came fast and furious. The department recognizes that there's additional communication happening by Fidium besides that one single letter that you saw included on page 128 of the FCC petition. The department recognizes that for customers who just don't respond to the communication, that their service is put in a suspended state. But if they do respond and the order is not able to be completed by the date referenced in the letter, that it's our understanding that Fidium is just maintaining that service. For instance, I spoke to someone earlier and they were part of that group that is impacted by this. They got the letter from Fidium. They called and they said, I want my fiber and conduit. I have the conduit. It just needs to be run. And Fidium agreed and said, okay, but we can't do that by the cutoff date. You're just going to maintain your service in this current iteration. Once spring comes and we're able to access the conduit and the trenching, then we'll switch you over. So we recognize that's happening for the people that are placed in that suspended state. It's our understanding, and it has been confirmed that in addition for them being able to reach customer service, they can pick up the phone and continue to dial 911 and reach emergency services. That was a big concern that we had. I believe Barb Neal shared that concern, and that has since been confirmed that regardless of whether or not the phone works to make outgoing calls or receive incoming calls, the ability to dial 911 still exists. The department recognizes that Fidium is not forcing voice-only customers to swap, and they'll continue to support the voice-only copper network until such a time that they have a VoIP product to offer. So the populations that are impacted by this discontinuance are not people who only have what's called last basic local exchange service, telephone service. Those people are just being left on their current product until such a time that Fidium is able to create and offer a voice-only product. Yep.
So I just want to clarify, the department is saying they're not being forced, but in fact they are once there's an alternative for voice over IP service.
That's my assumption, but currently, I mean, in this current discontinuances are going through these iterations. It's my understanding that they're not even reaching out to those people who have voice-only service.
So I have customers who have been to let go of their service, multiple customers as this transition is happening. So, and I understand the inevitability of it. I just want to make sure we're clear So we're not forcing them in advance of the VoIP, but once the VoIP is available, they are in fact forced.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
Video could testify to that, but I believe that's correct. The department does not take issue with the migration. It just takes issue with the communications. That's consistently been our issue, is that this is what we do as a Department of Public Service. Our job is to look out for the public good. We don't need to write your communications. We don't need to even vet your communications. We just need to know that you're doing a good job in reaching out to the citizens impacted by this technology change. And the department recognizes a need to migrate away from this, and it's our job as a Department of Public Service. Finally, the testimony given on 1/7/2026 by Hedi on once again implied they're open to negotiate an MOU. This discussion has once again restarted. We actually have a meeting tomorrow between myself, Hedi representatives in the Kathy department to go over the whole communication, I guess, cadence and tree that happens when they go to switch somebody, so that they're going to show us from the first communication to the final service install the number of paper mailings, emailings, and other communications that they get, so that we are able to be more comfortable with. We're hopeful that this will result in an agreement where the department and Fidium are both able to feel comfortable around the manner and amount in which the inevitable switch occurs, as well as minimize any potential negative impacts for Vermonters. I lost that crossed off because I get kind of unhinged at times, but it might be hard to believe. But in general, we recognize this. We just got another petition, was emailed to me on the 12th for another 1,640 people. After the previous conversations that we just had, I think the intent is, with permission, I will probably put out a press release on our website with a link directly to that petition.
Rep Civilian in Southwood?
So you did not receive notice of the previous.
I received notice of the previous as I was in discussions about the MOU. Let me see my notes. I just received that on Monday, November 17th at 1:04 p.m.
And when, right, that was during the public comment period, like a few days before the public comment period. So you didn't receive that in advance of their petition to the FCC.
That's good.
This one, do you know where it is in the timeline? Have you received it in advance of their petition to the FCC?
I believe I received it concurrently with the petition to the
And
FCC.
so there's currently a public comment period that's open at the FCC on this.
I believe so, yes.
And so, and what I think I heard you say is the department is considering putting out a press release about that,
Yes,
which seems highly appropriate to me.
yes.
I do have another question.
I have a question.
Technology.
I have a question about, so the petition that we're talking about right now, that is to do what? Same thing?
Correct, yes. Same thing.
Just 1,600 more addresses.
1,640 more people in some other exchanges, including St. Johnsbury, Newfane, Williamsville, Jacksonville, Jamaica, and Woodsboro.
To make the Fidium conversion, the fiber conversion.
Correct. To migrate people from legacy copper to fiber service.
And you said that was about 1,600.
Yes.
Yeah, Rep.
Can I just ask my second question?
Yeah.
I know. So my other question is around notice and why it feels really important to me for the department to be engaged in this and engaged in this early on. And that is related to copper dependent technologies for things like life alert, for elevators, other items. And, not everyone is reading there or has the ability, has equal ability, to decipher notices that are sent to them. And so I've asked you, Director Thompson, about, whether or not it's even possible to adjust for those copper dependent technologies, which you assured me that it is. I presume that there's some cost associated with that, probably some time is associated with that. Can you speak to any programs that are available to help Vermonters migrate their copper dependent technologies over to fiber compliant. Am I being clear or
Yeah,
not?
yeah, for being clear. I don't believe there's any specific programs, but I also want to caveat that with I don't think that there is a large amount of technology that is completely fiber dependent. I think that
Copper dependent.
I'm sorry, copper dependent.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, for lack of a better way of saying it, just works. Right? The majority of this stuff you plug in, and whatever device is on the side of the ONT or the side of the fiber that's providing a dial tone has no idea that it's fiber on the other side providing a dial tone. There are a few instances where this comes up, and it's largely with older devices. I know Life Alert has been brought up. I've spoken to Life Alert more than once, even before this, for some other people who reached out, and have been reassured a number of times that Life Alert devices work over fiber connectivity. Like there's no changes that need to happen to your Life Alert, whether you plug it into a VoIP system or whether you plug it into copper. I know there had been a previous report, it's called right before Christmas, about it, and I'm unsure about the details around that, but Life Alert devices work with fiber and with VoIP. The one issue I have seen was I got a call last year from someone in Morrisville, had about a 35 or 40-year-old fax machine that he wanted to keep using
Mhm.
that needed an additional box that helped with the conversion from copper to fiber. And I think the box itself costs $90, and you just kind of stick it in between the two. And it makes it so his 40-year-old fax machine continued to work.
Cheaper to buy a new
So-
fax machine.
Life Alert, there's like a customer would have. See, it's seamless. They don't need to do anything.
That's my understanding. That's what Life Alert claims in my conversations with them. Again, with the caveat that if you potentially have a 25-year-old Life Alert device
Mhm.
that potentially exists, that would need to be updated, or that would need one of a digital to analog converter box in line to make it work.
Feels like a pretty important change for those folks to know they need to
I
make.
agree, and part of the discussions that we are having with Fidium at the moment is additional questioning around whether there are any additional devices that the person uses that are related to health and safety.
Deafblind is my last. one. People who are deaf and blind.
That's the
That
systems,
service, yeah,
those, and the reports I've gotten, those work seamlessly as well.
seamless. No change in equipment, nothing needs to happen
That's the claim that has been given to me.
by
Fidium, as well as we have a quarterly at this point, PTRS meeting. A lot of people are looking to migrate away from that traditional deafblind community service that happened over TTY
Mhm.
to more internet connectivity, basically chatting applications back and forth.
I would just encourage you to check in with the entities that are actually servicing these Vermonters, since Consolidated has repeatedly shown that they're not always thinking about these folks, thinking
Rep
that
Southworth?
So this was the second filing that you're aware of, that 1,600.
Correct. Yes.
Just want to point out that when we had Consolidated on, I specifically asked the question if there was another filing in the pipeline, and the answer was no, not that they were aware of.
You know, I was
So I
looking
just
for
wanna
my
point
notes
that
from,
out.
yeah, thank you. I was looking for my notes from last week and I can't find it.
That's concerning to me.
That I lost my notes?
No.
Consolidated said that.
That they're not being upfront with us.
Right. That would be a good question to bring back to, well, when we're done with this, testimony today, I wanted to have a similar conversation about who do we need to hear from? What do we think we need to do about this, if anything? So could you remind me?
Oh, I won't.
Remember, yeah. So sounds like we'll need to hear from Consolidated again. Okay, sorry.
okay.
Oh, yeah, Rep Campbell?
I'm just wondering about, if anybody So I'm thinking about, putting out a notice, I did St. John, probably putting out a notice about people, that this transition is happening, and if one of your devices doesn't work, where do you go? So I'm assuming CCI will provide a phone number. Is the department also prepared to take those phone calls?
Department is always prepared to take concerns from constituents and use what leverage we have to get an amenable resolution.
And is providing those phone numbers to customers who are being transitioned part of what the city is required to do?
I'd have to defer to the FCC order on exactly what is required, but I know that the phone number at the end of the order is a generic help desk number, which will triage people and triage requests
For the department or
for video.
Is there, maybe what I'll do is just provide the department number in my department phone. So that would be the Kathy.
That would be happy. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And provide my number directly. I'm always happy to help any of them.
Okay. Just call me.
Do you have any you'd like to add, or for Hunter, you still working through your notes?
No, and there's no soapbox section on this. So
Disappointing. Yeah,
I don't know that I've got anything to add. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think Hunter's covered them pretty well.
okay.
I have one more question.
Yep.
So, in terms of, we are federally granted on a lot of issues related to telecommunications providers. It does appear that we are not federally granted on requiring notice for these types of things. So does the department have a position on some sort of belt and suspenders approach here where you can get a nice MOU and we can put some state law with some teeth behind it in terms of notice?
So the department's position is that we are hopeful that we will come to an agreement where the department and are able to both feel comfortable around the amount and manner in which this inevitable switch occurs, as well as minimize the potential negative impacts or performance.
That's another question, Madam Chair.
Yes, and then I have a couple comments.
So if we may, Madam Chair, I would like to know if the department is opposed to us putting in statutes and notice requirements.
All right, why don't we put a pin in that just for 1 second? Can you hang on for a minute and stick around? Great. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and this is a good time to do that, about next steps for this conversation that we're having in our committee. We had talked about in our testimony last week about an MOU between Consolidated and the department. So a question in my mind was whether our committee felt that was sufficient. If we wanted to see that MOU, if we wanted to weigh in on what the MOU should include, or whether we would like to move forward with, great, let's get an MOU in place, and we will also, get a bill out that outlines some of the things we'd like to see so that we've got this in statute, as well as an MOU that represents a moment in time. So if, as a committee, we decide it would be useful to also have statutory language, then my questions are, we would need to draft a committee bill. I don't know if some of the provisions near the end of H11 would be a starting point for that, or if they're not relevant. And then we would need to take testimony, we would need to get opinions, basically, on what that language is, what we include, what we not include, and hear from everybody whether they like that or don't like it, and then we would need to vote on that. So I feel like we're at a crossroads where we're either gonna take oversight testimony, make some requests, about the MOU that we hope to circle back on, like, here's the MOU, what do you think? Or whether we feel like we need to pass a bill. So,
Madam Chair, this company has a history in the state of Vermont of multiple service quality investigations. We've heard testimony today that I would consider that to be not in good faith, to be talking about an MOU and then petitioning the FCC without notifying the department. And, I think putting in place in statute some modest requirements related to notice feels pretty modest and like the least we can do for Vermonters as they're going through this transition. And I would like to see us, at a minimum, put in place some requirements to notify E911, requirements to notify the department, both in writing and in email, about this, just so that they're able to help notify the public. I agree that this migration is inevitable, it's coming, but let's Vermonters.
Do folks want to see it? Yeah,
So I caveat that 911 was included on the email we got a couple days ago.
but
A
that's
great new development.
that's voluntary, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a new development. So, how do folks feel about this? Want to draft a committee bill? Do you want to request that we see the MOU and see what's in it?
I'd want to see the MOU
First,
first.
I understand about putting it in statute. But I also look at the other side of it is if they don't do what they're told, what are their implications for doing that? What are the penalties? So it's not just requiring them that, we have to hold them to that. And how do you do that? And in what avenue do you do that?
That might be a great question for Director Porter. If we put something like that in statute, how would we hold it accountable?
Especially because the FCC is involved in this. I mean, would we be overreaching by X, Y, or Z or not? I just want to be careful that we're not putting something into play that we can't do anything with.
Mhm.
Typically, with MOUs that have happened with regulated utilities in the past, is they've been an opportunity, once they've been agreed to by the parties and the PUC approves them, then they have allowed for things that maybe were beyond the scope of our jurisdiction. We did a lot of broadband MOUs, and so once that was adopted, then it became subject to the PUC's review, even though by subject matter it wouldn't necessarily be. Does that make any sense? It's funny when we went through this some years ago with VTEL. They got a grant for their service territory and they pulled out all the copper and did the fiber. And the federal law was a little different than what it is now, and it was not as prescriptive. And so they actually worked with the department to inform their customers, and battery backup was a big deal. And so this is, and that's a company, at times we've had adversarial relationships, but that was one they were trying to work with us and their customers to get better information, which seems to not exactly be there with this current crew.
I just want to look to see if any other thoughts. Maria, do you have anything to add?
Nothing inconsistent with what was just said. I think on the preemption issue, you're right to consider that. If you decide to move forward and have statutory requirements. As you all know, the Communications Act contemplates dual jurisdiction between the federal government and the state government when it involves a service like broadband, kind of inherently interstate, but this also implicates voice service, kind of the intrastate voice, even though it's part of a broader interstate network. So essentially, what the Communications Act says is states are not permitted to enact laws that have the effect of prohibiting telecom service. You know, the introduction into the market or the provisioning service. And in addition, there's kind of a carve out that says states, notwithstanding that, you know, you can't enact laws that have that effect, you are still permitted to regulate in the interest of consumer protection, public safety. So it's all kind of envisioned in the whole act that states still retain that authority. So I think what it comes down to is, since there are FCC regulations that have notice requirements, as long as you don't do anything that hinders that process, stops or delays that process, or interferes, conflicts with, then I think you're okay. So just keeping that in mind. And as far as enforcement goes, I think, you know, you can have penalties, you know, monetary fines or penalties, you know, that might apply. That might be one way of enforcing statutory requirements. So anyway.
So I wouldn't mind seeing a draft committee bill just because it would give us something concrete to look at and compare to the MOU and take testimony on, something for people to reply to. So I think it could be, and we don't have to, you know, if we get it in here and we get testimony and we don't vote it out, we don't vote it out. But to me, it gives people something very concrete to testify about. This is what we're looking at. This is what we're considering. What do you think? So I'll request it. And I think it can be simple, and you guys help me pitch in. Like, I think we want to include who is notified, and we want to make sure that it's not just the governor, the PUC, and the Secretary of Defense, but also the department and the E911 board. That would be a good starting list. And then when they're notified,
Prior to the filing would be,
but how far prior? I'm just thinking in order. Okay, so
Yes.
don't.
that's up for discussion, but I think that we need to have that prior to. And
Prior to the filing,
it'd just be good to know before.
60 days. I feel like 60 days is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
And then how they're notified is important. So I think dropping a 138-page packet in the mail is not okay. So we could say, you know, by mail and email to the, you know, commissioner, the chair, the commissioner chair, the agency head.
As I recall, they buried their notice at the bottom of that 138-page doc. So
Yeah, and the
I mean, it seems
notification
petty, but
needs to
it
be
needs to
clearly upfront.
in the front, you know.
And then I don't know how you, or, you know, whether this is too much, but, some sort of acknowledgement that it's been received. I think, you know, we send these notifications out. I mean, I as a state rep, feel like I send things out and you know, I don't like having to email people 3 or 4 times to say, did you get my email? Did you get my email? So maybe there needs to be some sort of acknowledgement of receipt. And then in terms of enforcement and penalties, to me, it seems sufficient that it's state law. I don't know. I mean,
But if they violate it, what do you?
Then what?
Can you do?
So backing up a little bit, the construction process here, they definitely identified 1,640 people in 6 exchanges, less than 300 people per exchange. They must have done some pre-work already. They must have already
Mhm.
latched their fiber on and run it down the road, and now they and so I kind of pay attention to the lashers on the side of the road when I drive by them, and they're forever going just a few sections of pole length, maybe not forever, but they know well in advance between in their construction process. And so I think they are holding off on their notification. I think they could notify a lot sooner. And that's just kind of a question, how they build and what they know that they're not telling anybody. And what's the construction process? What's the timeline from the date of first notification to this suspending service?
You'll likely get testimony on that last week,
Yeah, I don't know.
on the timeline, which is in my TBD notes.
Madam Chair, I appreciate the bill that you've outlined, in terms of, holding them accountable. I think we can reach out to the Attorney General if they violate the law. Is that right?
You mean in the absence of anything?
Anything, yeah, of any penalties, like what?
I don't know. I mean, you might want to specify what you hope happens. I mean, typically, well, maybe this is too much, but you could say that a violation of these consumer protections are a violation of the Consumer Protection Act, which would be a hook for the Attorney General to enforce violations. And that comes with a whole host of investigatory authority, AG, state's attorneys, as well as private individuals. Private action. So anyway, that's just
But
something that
Then what happens if the Attorney General finds that they are in fact in violation?
are in violation.
Yes.
There are penalties and damages
In
provisions
that-
in the Consumer Protection Act. Yeah.
And what we're talking about here is notifying the Department of Public Service and the E-911 board by mail and email. So presumably it will not be that hard to comply.
Wouldn't think so.
Per month. The time I date 4 months was the notice,
Okay,
and then they mail first and third week thereafter.
I like that as opposed to putting fines.
I do too. I feel like a fine is,
I think that's
Arbitrary.
it is better. Okay, any other? So now that you've heard that whole thing, any thoughts on that idea, or would you want to come back in and testify when you've had a minute to?
We would have to process
Take
that
me.
and come back and testify.
Yeah. Okay, so we will get a committee bill going, and then when we have something for folks to look at, we'll invite Consolidated to come in and invite you guys come in. We'll get everybody back in. And then in the meantime, it sounds like the MOU is proceeding on its own parallel track. Yeah, Rev Southward.
So playing devil's advocate to a certain point,
Yeah,
if we're entertaining putting this into statute and Department of Public Service is actively trying to do an MOU, is there a chance that they're going to clash to where an MOU may be the best avenue and they're going to walk away from it?
walk away from the MOU.
I just, simpler is always better as long as the end result is the same. If we can accomplish the same thing through the MOU, is it necessary that we do the statute as well?
I can only tell you what I worry about with an MOU is that, it feels more like a point in time for me, and so,
That's fine.
you know what I mean? 3 years from now, we're all gone and Hunter's gone and everybody's turned over at consolidated and, I just worry about,
3 new owners for consolidation.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that point up.
yeah. I don't really know the answer to that.
Well, on that point, I was wondering, how long this transition is gonna be. Because that makes a difference, right? And I know there was a little bit of testimony on that, but maybe we need to get a better sense. I wondered if part of the timeline for the transition overall has to do with their own budget and how they make decisions. So, because to me, an MOU, because it is a point in time, like, could work if we're talking about a pretty speedy transition. But if this is really gonna drag on, and we're not gonna have a good sense of what they prioritize when, then maybe that would imply that statute change would be.
And it did sound from their testimony like this may be a long
I guess
process.
that's sense.
They suggested that they'd identified one set of customers whom they were notifying and the other ones are not getting notified because they're not part of this transition, it sounded like. And can I just point out the sad state of affairs that we're contemplating legislation to force a communications company to communicate?
We're gonna publish this.
This is probably irrelevant, but one thing I'm thinking about, with the statute is if we word it properly, whether it might outlast all of us and its usefulness. Like by the time we finish this technological transition, is there going to be another one on the? I mean, I don't know.
Put a sunset in place, Madam Chair.
No, I'm thinking of the opposite.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm thinking of trying to write something that would
So
that would think ahead.
when they're ripping out the fiber and
When
replacing
they're
it
ripping out the
with
fiber,
semaphores.
yeah, replacing it with
Yeah.
chip implants in our heads or something, then,
Consolidated.
yeah, sorry. That did go dark.
Consolidated may be the largest of the communication. How are the other companies? You mentioned VTEL. Are they fibered out? Or are they completely?
Yes, details.
And what about the smaller telephone companies? Are they in various stages or are they?
I think there are various stages in the transition to go completely to fiber.
Like little telephone TDS, they're a big conglomerate of little patches around the state.
Yeah, they continue to move people, but not in the bulk and not as many people at one signal at one time. We also, quite honestly, we don't hear as many complaints. I look at Franklin Telephone in the northern part of the state as a good example of exactly how a small local municipal telephone company can be run. And they've transitioned the bulk of their folks to fiber already.
All with proper notifications.
As far as I know.
Okay. All right. Hunter and Vic, thank you so much for coming in. We are back at 1 o'clock. We're switching back to 248A. And this afternoon, we're going to be hearing from our wireless providers. Okay, we can go offline.